Okay. So our project is an app called Carbon Aware Travel, and we abbreviated it to CAP, and it's by Sherilyn and Sophia. And so we chose this topic because according to the EPA, transportation energy actually creates 27% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the US, which is more than any other section. And so we wanted to target the section that was having the greatest impact on the environment. And so the problem that we wanted to solve was how do we know which method of travel is the most sustainable while still being realistic?
Yeah, so in order to take both viability and sustainability into consideration, we need to be able to measure them. So we decided to use Google API to find the time t in minutes that it takes for the whole trip, and also the distance, which we then combine with this carbon emission data from the EPA to find the total carbon emitted, which is C. We use these two variables to calculate the score of optimization O, and the first equation we had was O equals C plus T. We also wanted the user to be able to choose 3 different options. So we created this weighted O function. Extremely is when we're very focused on sustainability. So we're only looking at the carbon emitted. And then moderate is when we're considering both carbon emitted and time taken. So you're willing to take a reasonable amount of time for sustainability. And then realistic is when we're only looking at the time taken for the trip. Then we realized that a bigger O would be more representing the more desirable result would be more intuitive. So we came up with this inverse weighted O function where a smaller C and T will make a bigger O.
So then we realized that just directly adding carbon and time doesn't really make sense because they have like 2 very different ranges and their units of measure are completely different. And so to fix this, we decided to multiply the carbon term by the minimum carbon emissions and the time term by the minimum time taken among all the travel modes, so that we're instead adding like the ratios of carbon and time instead of adding them directly. And for public transit, since you sometimes have to walk between stops, we have a slightly changed O function where we simply just added all of the carbon emissions and all the time for all of the different sections for the route of public transit.
Yeah, and this is an example of the O function at work. And as you can see with these numbers, the biking has the highest O score, so that's the preferred option here. But even if it does emit a lot less carbon, most people won't really have the time or stamina to bike for 58 whole minutes. So we decided to set a maximum biking time as 45 minutes and a maximum walking time as 30 minutes.
And so this is the architecture of our website, where the user will put in their point A and point B, as well as the mode that they want to use. And then our app will get the time and distance between the 2 locations using Google API. And then using that, it'll calculate the total carbon emitted. And using the total carbon and the time, it'll calculate the final O scores. And then if the travel time is exceeded for walking or biking, it'll set that O score to 0. And lastly, it will rank and recommend all of the travel modes and generate graphs so that the user has a more visual representation of how the travel modes compare. And so let's move on to the demo. So this is our website so far. So I put in 2 locations already that are pretty close. Oh, sorry. So these 2 locations are 2 pretty close locations. And so if we put the mode to moderate, bicycling will be the best option because it generates the least amount of carbon while also having a realistic travel time, which is just about 5 minutes. However, if we change the mode to realistic, since this mode only takes the time into consideration, driving will be the best option because it has the lowest travel time, which is only 4 minutes. But if we put a location that's a bit further and we have the travel mode on moderate, the driving will be the best option because biking and walking both greatly exceed the maximum travel times. And so even though driving emits more carbon than public transit, it also saves a lot more time. And so driving has the highest O score here. But if we change the mode to extremely sustainable, transit will actually be the best option because it emits the least amount of carbon compared to driving. So if we go back to the slides to wrap up.
Yeah, so for our next steps, we want to allow the user to configure their own maximum biking walking time since everyone has different stamina. And we also want to support a couple more modes such as aircraft, e-car, and carpool mode for multiple users. And that's our project. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.